The Congo does not announce itself. It simply grows larger and darker and quieter, until you understand that the river beside you carries more water than any river on earth save one, and that you can no longer see the far bank. I have spent a long time on rivers like this, and this is the one that still makes me lower my voice. It is not the size alone, it is the sense, standing on the bank, that a great deal is happening just out of sight, beneath the surface, inside the trees, in places no map has ever truly reached. For a long time, the outside world treated this whole basin as a blank, a green space to be crossed, or emptied, or feared from a safe distance. And into that blank we poured our worst imaginings, monsters and curses, and things that were never really there. The truth is stranger, and it does not need the monsters. What is genuinely here, and genuinely recorded, is unsettling enough on its own. One fact is worth holding on to as we go. This is the second largest rainforest on the planet, after the Amazon, and by some measures the least explored of the two. There are corners of it that no scientist has ever walked, rivers that appear on no detailed map, and a stretch of swamp at its heart, the size of a small country, that we finished charting only within the last few years. When a place is that vast and that dark, it does not merely hide the odd animal, it hides whole chapters of the world, and it gives them up slowly, and only when it chooses to. What follows are 7 things the Congo has given up to us. Most are living. One is a place. One is a story I cannot prove, and I will say so plainly when we reach it. Each is real in its own way, and each says something about a forest we have never once come close to understanding. Let me begin in the water, because that is where the Congo keeps some of its worst-tempered residents. The first is a fish, and it is not a large one by the standards of the sea. But in a river, it is a nightmare with fins. It is called the Goliath tigerfish, and a grown one can reach the length of a man and the weight of a large dog. What you notice, though, is not the size. It is the mouth. Set into those jaws are 2 rows of teeth like daggers, each one long and interlocking and replaceable, built for a single purpose. To take a piece out of something in one pass, it hunts in the fast, murky water of the main river, where the current runs hard and the visibility is almost nothing. Instead, it seems to rely on sensing the beat of another creature moving through the water and then striking with a speed that is difficult to follow by eye. The local fishermen treat it with a respect that borders on dread. It is one of the very few freshwater fish anywhere that is reliably reported to turn on people, and it has been known to take prey as large and as armored as small crocodiles. Here is the part worth sitting with. This is not a monster from the deep ocean, hidden a mile down. It lives in a river that people fish and wash in and cross every day. The Congo does not keep its predators far away and safely mythical. It keeps them close, in the brown water at the edge of ordinary life. There is one more thing worth knowing about it, which is what it is related to. The Goliath tigerfish belongs to the same broad family as the piranhas of South America, those small fish so famous for their bite. But where a piranha is little and works in a shoal, this animal has taken the same basic design and scaled it up into a solitary hunter as long as a person, carrying some of the largest teeth for its size of any fish in fresh water. Those teeth are replaceable. As they wear down or break against bone, new ones rise to take their place, so that the trap is always sharp. And it strikes in water so thick with sediment that any hunter relying on its eyes would starve. It does not need to see you clearly. It only needs to feel you move. And it is only the fiercest of a very crowded field. The Congo River holds one of the richest communities of fish anywhere in fresh water, many hundreds of kinds, a great number of them found in this river system and nowhere else on Earth. New ones are still being described today. The tigerfish is simply the one at the top, the apex of a hidden world of teeth and scales that we have barely begun to write down. The second also lives at the water's edge, and it comes wrapped in a legend that I have to unwrap with some care. On the rivers that feed the Great Lakes at the eastern edge of the basin, there are stories, told for years, of an enormous crocodile. A single animal, far larger than the rest, with a pale hide and a broken tooth, that had learned to take the most dangerous prey of all, which is us. In the telling, this one crocodile was blamed for a great many deaths. Some accounts put the number in the hundreds. Now, I want to be honest about where the truth sits. A very large Nile crocodile, in that region, is entirely real. Animals approaching 6 meters, weighing the better part of a ton, living for many decades, are not folklore. They exist, and a crocodile of that size can, and occasionally does, take a person. The specific tally of hundreds, attached to one named animal, is another matter. It has never been confirmed, and it has grown, as these numbers always grow in the retelling. What is likely true is that a genuinely enormous, genuinely dangerous crocodile lived in those waters, was hunted for and filmed, and never caught, and has not been reliably seen for some years now. So the honest version is quieter than the legend, and no less unsettling. Somewhere in that region, there was, and perhaps still is, a reptile old enough and large enough to regard a grown human as prey. We did not need to invent the number. The animal was frightening enough at its true size. There is a reason a crocodile can grow that large, and it is not a comfortable one. Unlike us, a crocodile never really stops growing. Give it enough decades and enough food, and it simply keeps getting bigger. What it needs, above all, is to be left alone to grow old, and parts of this region have provided exactly that, because long years of unrest kept hunters and fishermen off the water, and let a few animals reach a size the modern world rarely permits. People did try to take this one. A team tracked it and built a great trap for it, and filmed the whole effort, and came away with nothing at all. It was too clever, or too lucky, or simply too old to be caught, and then the sightings quietly stopped, and no one can say for certain whether it is dead, or merely older now, and more careful than ever. It is worth understanding how an animal like that hunts, because it explains the fear. A large crocodile does not give chase. It waits, submerged, at the exact places where thirsty animals and people must come down to the water. It can hold still for hours, showing nothing above the surface but its eyes, and then cross the last short stretch in a single explosive lunge, seizing its prey and rolling it under. Patience of that kind, in a body that size, is what makes the water's edge, all along this river, a place to be approached with care. My third leaves the water, and it is not one creature but millions, moving as a single thing. On the forest floor, at certain times, the ground itself appears to move. A dark river of insects, tens of meters long, pouring across the leaf litter in a dense column. These are the driver ants, and a single colony can contain many millions of individuals. When they march, almost nothing in their path is ignored. They flow over the ground in a broad front, and any small creature too slow to leave is overwhelmed by sheer number. Larger animals simply move aside and let the column pass, which can take hours. The soldiers among them are built for defense, with jaws so large and so strong that they seem out of proportion to the body. And here the story turns, unexpectedly, toward us. For those jaws have a use. In parts of Africa, people faced with a deep wound and no needle have long known a remarkable trick. You hold the edges of the cut together, and you let a soldier ant bite down across the line of it. The jaws clamp the skin shut. Then you twist the body away, and the head remains, holding the wound closed like a living stitch. A row of them will seal a serious cut. That is the Congo in a single image. The same swarm that can strip a trapped animal to the bone also provides, in its own body, one of the oldest surgical tools known to humankind. Horror and help, here, run directly through the very same set of jaws. There is something else strange about them. They have no home. Most ants dig a nest and keep it. These do not. When the column rests, the ants themselves become the nest. Tens of thousands of bodies linking legs to form living walls, and bridges and chambers, with the queen sheltered somewhere deep in the mass. When it is time to move again, the building simply stands up and walks away. They are also, for all their menace, very nearly blind. Instead, they find their way by scent and by touch, following chemical trails laid down by the ants ahead. And they support a small economy of their own. Certain birds have learned to follow the marching column, not to eat the ants, but to snatch up the insects that leap and scatter to escape them. Even terror, in this forest, has creatures that make their living from it. It is tempting to think of the colony not as millions of insects, but as a single, spread-out animal. There is one queen, vast by the standards of an ant, who does almost nothing but lay eggs, tens of thousands of them in a single day. Every other ant is, in a sense, a part of her body, sent out to feed and to fight and to carry the young. The thing crossing the forest floor is not really a crowd. It is one creature, wearing a million legs. The fourth is a gentler kind of strange, and it begins with a sound in the night. Along certain forest streams in the west of this region, after dark, you may hear a deep, low call that seems too large for any frog. And it is. The animal making it is the Goliath frog, the largest frog alive anywhere on Earth. A big one can stretch to the length of a house cat and weigh as much as a newborn child. It is not poisonous. It is not aggressive. It is simply enormous. In a family of animals we expect to fit in the palm of a hand. For a long time, one thing about it puzzled the people who studied it. These frogs lay their eggs in small, clear pools at the edge of fast streams, pools that seemed too neat, too sheltered to be chance. The answer, when it came, was quietly astonishing. They build them themselves. A Goliath frog will move stones, some of them heavy enough to test a grown person, clearing and walling off a small pond to shelter its eggs from the rushing water. It is one of the very few frogs known to build anything at all. A giant, doing careful engineering, by a stream in the dark, entirely unwatched. Its size, though, comes at a price. A frog that large cannot tuck itself away the way a small one can, and cannot leap clear of every danger, though a Goliath frog can cover a remarkable distance when it must. It is hunted, heavily, for food. It breeds slowly, and it lives only in a narrow band of fast forest streams that are shrinking around it. The largest frog on Earth is now also an endangered one. There is a lesson in that which runs through the whole of nature. Gigantism is rare, and it is fragile. It takes a very particular, very stable world to grow an animal all the way to the edge of what its body will allow. And that kind of world is exactly the kind we are best at disturbing. There is one more oddity to it. For all the depth of that nighttime call, the Goliath frog lacks the inflating throat sac that most frogs use to make themselves heard, and produces its sound in a stranger, quieter way. A giant, then, that is in some respects unexpectedly soft-spoken and easy to walk past, right up until you are standing almost on top of it in the dark. The fifth is my favorite kind of discovery, because it shows how easily a large animal can hide, not in the forest, but from science itself. Early in the last century, an American scientist traveling in the Congo noticed something small and odd, a single unusual feather, worn in the headdress of a local man. It did not match any bird he knew, and he could not forget it. Years later, far from the forest, he was walking through a museum in Belgium when he stopped in front of two dusty mounted birds, pushed aside and mislabeled as a familiar species from Asia. He knew at once that the label was wrong. These were not Asian birds at all. They were the owners of that strange feather, a large, handsome bird that no scientist had ever properly described. We call it the Congo peacock. It was, at the time, one of the most significant bird discoveries of the century. A large and striking creature that had walked the forest all along, known to the people who lived there, and entirely missed by the science that believed its lists complete. This bird had not been hiding in the trees so much as in our own carelessness, standing in plain sight in a museum, under the wrong name, waiting for someone to look twice. It raised a real puzzle too once it was recognized. Its closest relatives, the true pheasants and peafowl, all live in Asia, on the far side of the world. To find one of their kind, alone, deep in an African forest, was like finding a single word of one language stranded in the middle of another. It hinted at an older and a wider history for these birds than anyone had yet drawn, a map of the deep past that we are still redrawing now. And it was not the only time this forest has done this to us. The same basin gave up the okapi, that strange relative of the giraffe, in almost the same way, and in almost the same years. Twice over, within a single lifetime, a large and unmistakable animal stepped out of the Congo and into the record books, having stood there, in full view of its neighbors, the entire time. The sixth is not an animal at all. It is a place, and it is the darkest thing on this list, because what came out of it changed the whole world. In the south of the Congo, there was a mine. On the surface, one more scar in the ground, in a region already torn up for its metals. But the rock here held something exceptionally rare. Uranium ore of a richness found almost nowhere else on the planet. In the years around the Second World War, that ore was quietly bought, and shipped, and used. The uranium from this one Congo mine became the core of the first atomic bombs, the ones that fell on 2 Japanese cities and ended, in fire, hundreds of thousands of lives. Sit with the strangeness of that. A hole in the ground in the heart of the African forest, whose contents reshaped the entire century, and whose name most of the world has never heard. The mine was later sealed and officially closed, but rock that valuable is never truly left alone, and people have gone on digging at it, in secret and in danger, ever since. The most frightening thing the Congo has given up was not a creature at all. It was a grey ore, taken out quietly, that taught our whole species a new way to be afraid. The human story behind it is as strange as the science. As war drew closer, the man who ran the mine quietly shipped an enormous quantity of its ore out of the country. and had it stored, in secret, in a warehouse across the Atlantic, so that when the moment came, the material was simply waiting. A great deal of what went into those first weapons had already left the Congo before most of the world knew the mine mattered at all. And the danger did not end with the war. The rock is still there, still radioactive, and still worth a fortune, which is a combination that has cost lives. Long after the mine was ordered shut and its entrance sealed, people have gone on digging into it by hand, in the dark, without protection, chasing money out of ground that was never safe to touch. The Congo handed the world its most fearful power, and has been quietly paying for it ever since. And that ground is still shaping our lives, in ways most of us never trace back to it. The same southern reach of the Congo that gave up the uranium is one of the richest storehouses of metals anywhere on the planet. The cobalt that sits inside a great many of the world's phones and electric cars is dug, in large part, from this same region, often by hand, and often in fearful conditions. The rock beneath this forest has now quietly powered two very different ages of the world, and the true cost of it has almost always been paid right here, out of sight. My seventh, and last, is the one I promised to be honest about, because here we cross from what is documented into what is only told. Deep in the swamps of the region, there is an old and stubborn story of a creature that flies, not a bird in the telling, and not a bat, but something leathery-winged and reptilian that guards certain stretches of water and will attack a canoe that comes too close. In one telling, it carries a name that means, roughly, the breaker of boats. When that description reached the outside world, some heard in it something thrilling, a flying reptile out of the deep past, surviving in an African swamp, and expeditions of a sort went looking. Let me be plain, as I said I would, there is no evidence of any such animal, no specimen, no clear photograph, nothing that would survive the ordinary tests we apply to any claim that a creature is real. The honest, careful conclusion is that no flying reptile haunts these swamps, but the story very likely has a root, and it is worth respecting. These waters hold enormous bats, with wingspans wide enough to startle anyone who meets one in poor light. They hold tall, strange, heavy-billed birds that stand as still as statues and launch without warning. Any of these, glimpsed by someone with reason to be wary, could be the seed of a legend that grows with each retelling. So the flying dragon of the swamp is not real. But the impulse behind the story is not foolish. It is what people do with a forest this full, and this poorly lit, and this genuinely dangerous. They fill the gaps in what they can see with something to be careful of, and in a place like this, that instinct has kept people alive. There is also a reason to hold the story gently, rather than to laugh at it. We have already seen tonight that this forest genuinely did hide large animals from science for a very long time. The okapi, the Congo peacock. If a bird that size could go unrecorded for decades, it is not foolish for people to wonder what else the swamps might be keeping. The difference always is evidence. When the okapi was doubted, a skull settled it. When the peacock was doubted, two forgotten birds in a museum settled it. For the flying dragon of the swamp, after a century of looking, nothing of the kind has ever appeared. So the careful answer is not that such a thing is impossible, but that there is no reason to believe it, and every reason to think the real animals of these waters, the great bats, and the tall, still, heavy-billed birds that launch without warning, are the truth sitting behind the tail. That, in the end, is the thread through all seven. A fish built like a trap. A crocodile larger than its legend needed it to be. A swarm that heals as readily as it harms. A giant that builds in secret. A bird that hid inside a museum. A grey rock that armed the world. And a monster that is only a shadow of the real dangers all around it. None of it is a curse. None of it was placed here to frighten us. It is simply the Congo, being what it has always been, one of the last places on Earth still large enough and dark enough to keep its secrets. And it is worth saying who has always known those secrets best. Not the outsiders, arriving with cameras and theories. The people of this forest have lived alongside the tigerfish, and the crocodile, and the marching ants, for far longer than any written record runs. They do not romanticize them, and they do not panic at them. They know what to fear, and what to leave well alone, and how to carry a deep wound to a soldier ant rather than a surgeon. The Congo is only a land of monsters to those who have never had to learn its actual rules. That too is why the outsider's fear so often misses the mark. It fixes on the wrong things, the invented dragon, the exaggerated number, and walks straight past the real dangers and the real wonders on either side of the path. Fear is a poor guide in a place like this. Attention is a far better one. If you want to keep paying attention to the real dangers and wonders hidden in places like this, subscribe to the channel. I have learned, over the years, not to walk into a forest like this looking for monsters. The monsters are a distraction. The truth is always stranger, and it is always still here, in the brown water, and the moving ground, and the quiet under the trees. And the forest, I promise you, is not finished showing it to us.